So my name is Nikki Rotshtein, and I have been a pediatric OT, occupational therapist, for 23 years. And then I decided to open up my parent coaching business. It's called Kavana Parenting. And the reason why I did that is what I saw is that when people, and when I say I saw, I mean working with over 1,000 families, really being a part of these families for a long time, is that change happens slow, right? Because a child will be brought in for therapy 1 hour, once a week. And even when the parents were in that session, it's just, we're distracted. We're like talking to the kid, talking to the parent. It was hard for them to walk away really fully immersed in how they can apply this at home. But when I see that I could train the parents and how to parent your child with ADHD, how to parent your child with anxiety, things go so much quicker. In 3 months, we see big changes because the parent has the tools. So when the meltdown is happening throughout the day, they're empowered. Because it's not always about the kid making the change. A lot of times it's what we can do in the environment to best support them. So that's how it started. The name Kavana means intention. And it's because at every given moment with my interactions with my children or the families who I'm helping, I'm thinking of two things. You're raising an adult. So from the time the kid is even a baby, like when I would take them out of their crib, I'd be waiting for them to catch their breath a second before I took them out of the crib to start that self-regulation progress. Yes, I was a therapist way before I was a parent, so that helped. But I'm always thinking, where are they going to be at 4, at 14, at 40? Okay? And the other intention that's in my head, the other kavana, is that life's too short. My parents passed away very young. I'm the youngest. I'm going to talk about this picture in a second. But what it taught me was that, first of all, children learn what they see you do more than what they say. And I could say that because I was very close with my father, but he passed away when I was 11. And we did not have deep, meaningful conversations. We had great dad and daughter conversations and activities and things like that. But I had learned so much about him from my observations of how he handled his illness, so that was always in my head. When I work with families, is this something we really want to make a big deal about? Is this something you want your children to remember you about? And it really helps frame things, because sometimes in the midst of everything, it helps my self-regulation, right? Like it helps me calm down. It's something I keep in my mind. So I'm just sharing that to pass on to you and to my other families. Okay, so this picture is very interesting to me. I'm number 8. I was not in this picture. It's hard to think that your family existed before you were born, okay? So it's funny, a lot of things, we're going to talk about sibling relationships. There are so many things that affect sibling. Like you said, you had a daughter who's 20. So my sister is 19 years older than me. I am still close with her, even though I really didn't live in the house with her because she got married at 20 and left the house. But so much affects us, like our birth order and different things. Everybody's a middle child in between. If you have 4 children, right? Like you have multiple middle children. But this picture was actually taken because they were 7 kids on the same bus. And I guess the newspaper thought that was so rare to have 7 kids going to the same school on the same bus at that time. But for me, it's just interesting because where was I? How did you guys exist without me? But, okay. So I like to say it, the ups, downs, and in between, because this is family life. Sometimes we have moments where our kids are just in it together, and sometimes you think they hate each other and would never choose each other. And that's actually a very important point. For those of us who have a partner, we chose our partner, right? We choose our friends. Siblings are put in this situation that they have to get along, and they might not even like each other, okay? So it's something to keep in mind, and we're going to talk more about that. So some things, a lot of times when I start working with a family, I ask them, what's your vision? What do you dream of in your house? And they always use the word calm. Okay, calm is not a word we can describe when you have young children, especially, and even teenagers, okay? Maybe calm is something when your children are older and they're kind of in their interests, but as long as you have young children, they're loud, chaotic, playful, mean sometimes, and will fight. So calm is not necessarily the word. What we do want is that they're respecting each other's body and space, right? So to some extent, sibling conflicts are normal, okay? Because again, even with good friends, sometimes you might not get along and then you have space from each other. With siblings, you might not have any space from each other. You have to share a room, right? You have to, besides for sharing the same house, sometimes some kids are lucky to have their own room. But we can teach skills to improve relationships. And one of the things that I see all the time is parents say, work it out. Have anybody here used that? I use that myself, but often we might say that. But guess what? We have to teach them how to work it out. And why do we have to do that? Because these are not just children now. They are going to be somebody's partner. They're going to be somebody's friend. They're going to be somebody's employee. We can't take just for granted. And how many times, like in work, does the morale of the workplace have to do with the relationships in the workplace? So what you're doing now is an investment in their future, okay? And just like certain things have to be taught, like toilet training, other things, working things out also has to be taught. So we're going to learn some strategies how to improve that. So it's very interesting. I'm sure you've read about it. I'm sure you've heard about it. Maybe Connecting for Kids have had events on this. What we find is the most significant impact on a child's success in life is not their IQ, their EQ, right? And their emotional intelligence, okay? And this is very important. Now, how do we help develop that? Is the emotional coaching we do for them. This is going to be, we can't solve all their solutions with their siblings, with their friends. And I'll tell you, this is the hardest part for me because I am a problem solver. I'll go back a little bit. When I was younger, I really wanted to be a child psychologist. Like literally from the time I was 9 years old, I didn't know the word psychologist. I'm 47. They didn't even have those in school then or something. I think I called it child counselor. And we had to write, what do you want to be when you grow up? So I wrote child counselor because children, this is really nerdy, children are the highlight of our future. And I used to have it in my room, hung up for years. And then I went to college and I was meeting with one of my professors or whatever, the head of the program. And he said, so what do you see yourself like doing? And I said, oh, I'm going to be a child psychologist. And he said, you'd be a terrible psychologist. This is what he tells me. I was devastated. All my dreams are shattered. And he said something so brilliant. He told me very insightfully, he goes, you talk too much. You don't know how to listen enough. And he said, people who are coming to really talk and you listen. And thank God I was directed to OT. And OT is a very, very problem-solving profession. And let's say we make goals. We don't meet them. We need new goals. Why didn't we meet them? So there's a lot of problem solving in there. So thank God I had that profession for 23 years. And now what I do is I'm really building on that. But so emotional coaching is the hardest thing for me because I'm already in problem solving mode. But that's not what it's about. It's about letting and sitting with them. And we're going to talk about that, especially for siblings of kids with special needs. We're going to talk a lot about why that is so important, but it's important for the whole family. So positive interactions, creating opportunities for positive sibling bonding and celebrating individual strengths. You might have the child, and this is really interesting. Somebody once pointed this out. Sometimes you have a child and you and your partner realize, and only you two could say this, you did not raise this child. The child was born disciplined. The child was born liking rules. It was not because you taught the child to be disciplined. That's just their wiring. And then you have the kid who is the exact opposite, always testing the limits, always this. It's not that you did something right for one and wrong with the other. That's how they're wired. That's how that's going to affect them in life, and we just need to support them, okay? So sometimes you have a kid who's just a superstar in school or a super athlete, okay? You have to make sure you are celebrating all your children. You know, some kids just need to get through school. And get through school might not even be finishing high school, maybe taking a GED, but he might be an excellent builder. You know, like in my family, one of my oldest brothers, he has a plumbing company, and he has a whole fleet of trucks and everything like that. That's the way his brain was. But he wasn't a type of person who could sit at a desk, right? Like, so you could still have very successful children who might not fit into that mold, but you have to make sure that you're not overpraising that kid whose things are coming naturally to or whatever, and you make sure that every kid is shining. And sometimes that's a challenge, but every single kid has some sort of strength. And it's our job as parents to make sure that we're highlighting that and celebrating that. And if you're not sure how, ask me. Like, make sure we talk afterwards, okay? And when everybody is being celebrated, they can celebrate each other also. So that's a very important thing. I do a class called Connect Before You Correct. If anybody's interested in that, I'm deciding if I should do it by Zoom or in person. On the little thing that you fill out at the end, you just let me know and I'll send you information about that because that's very important. Consistent management, establishing consistent rules, responsibilities, and fair privileges. So a lot of times, you know, with their puppy dog eyes, they look at us and they convince us to whatever. And sometimes it's one kid who's like really the effective negotiator and the other kid feels slighted. So it's very consistent that you realize when you do things, what precedent are you setting for two reasons. They're learning our threshold, okay? So they're seeing how long they have to do that, but also it really is not fair to another child. Sometimes there really is a kid who appears to be getting a lot more than, and it's not always about special needs. Sometimes it might be, it might be a kid with ADHD who has so many behavior charts. So they're constantly getting new Legos because they're constantly working hard to earn something. But that other child who doesn't have those behaviors is like feeling very slighted. So we're going to talk about that also. So we kind of how to be consistent and how to be consistent, meaning if you're letting him stay up for 15 minutes, then you're going to have another way that another kid could wait maybe on a different day to stay up for that 15 minutes, okay? So when the child feels that you're reasonable, they can accept it when you're doing it for the other siblings. Okay, so we said that dynamics could be definitely influenced by birth order. It's just a natural thing. I think that an oldest sometimes shows leadership because they kind of take that charge, but it's interesting. When I took my first psychology class at Tri-C, her name was Dr. Character, I never asked her if she stages this and does this with every class, or it happened to be something that she just did on that first day. She walked in with a bag of potato chips, a big bag of Lay's potato chips. And she said, by the way, I'm not going to share this with any of you. I'm the oldest of 7. I always had to share. And guess what? As an adult, I don't share. Okay? So I don't know if she did that like to make a point, but it's so true because I see this all the time. When a kid is imposed where it's not natural, as an adult, they become very careful about their space and their belongings and things like that. So it's something there's great stuff of being the oldest, but then sometimes we have to say that oldest does not always have to give in to the youngest, you know? That oldest could have things that they don't have to share. That's okay. Normal conflicts, there's to a certain extent that's going to happen. When is it a problem? When you feel like you're not functioning, when you feel like your house is out of control. That's when, I don't know if that's what brought you here tonight, and I applaud all of you, but when it reaches a certain point where it's more fighting than actual time that they're interacting. So we're going to learn some strategies about that. So again, realistic expectations. Calm is not the goal of a house, because as long as you have kids, unless they're on devices all day, and sometimes that can make it a calm house, but kids really like to know when to get involved. Sometimes they're loud and saying their opinion loudly, sometimes whatever, even mild aggression could be somehow in that bell curve of normal. But it's when things are just out, where you feel like you're out of control. Okay, so we're talking about that emotional coaching approach. And let's use the example of having a special needs sibling, okay? So a lot of times, let's say you're trying to give the other child some attention, okay? And you're playing a game. And it could be a new baby. Maybe you had a new baby even. And it needs to be fed and is screaming and it's their fussy hour and you have to stop the game. Or you have to stop the game because maybe your other child needs to be taken to therapy or is having a meltdown or something like that. Often, the child that you were playing with is considered a good sport. And I want us to avoid praising that child for that, and I want us to sit with that child in that space. And it doesn't mean that we have to sit that second. It could be after we tend to the needs of the other child. And sit with them and say how frustrating it was and how sad you were to end it. Because you might think they're being a good sport, but inside they're ruminating And it probably happens often, and we have to give them that space. So we're going to think about other times where we can make sure that it's not about, sometimes we might only have once a month that we could take them out by themselves. But when we show them that once a month, we put it on the calendar. We talk about it. So when one kid's having that meltdown and they have to give up what they're doing, we go back to that calendar. Oh my gosh, 10 days, Chuck E. Cheese. I can't wait. Which game are you going to do first, right? You're focusing them to that time. Now, I don't always believe that you have to do one-on-one things. Sometimes we do things collectively as a family. But if we see that it's always happening to one child, or if we have 2 children, when that is, if you had 3 children with one special needs child and 2 other children, so it could be taking those other 2 out. Doesn't mean that it has to be alone, but not phrasing them and praising them for being a good sport. Because actually, now I worked for 23 years, so my first clients are in their 30s, and it's very interesting things now that they're adults and their families are adults, and I keep in touch what came out of what they experienced. So don't think it just like gets away, like it goes away, but there really is that invisible child who always doesn't get their needs met. So we have to find ways, even if it's not all the time, but we're spotlighting them and in the moment to really do the emotional coaching. Again, we said that EQ is critical for future success. So I'm going to talk about slow and low approach. How many people here cook a roast or brisket? Okay. Do you use those words, slow and low? Yeah. Okay. Does it produce the best brisket? Okay. I want you to remember those words when you go and you're intervening with your children. Okay? Hysteria is very, very contagious. So when they are exploding and arguing and loud and maybe aggressive, what happens? We might come in, hey, what's going on here? Right? We have caught their hysteria. Now we are escalating the situation. We need them to catch our calm. Now, we fake it till we make it. We might not always be calm, okay? This might be extremely triggering, okay? There are some people who might be an only child. Somebody here was an only child, right? And when they had children who were doing this, it's new to you, right? It's totally, this is not your brain headspace. So when you go in and you practice this when they're at school, okay? Hey guys, you tell me first what's going on. You see how you just brought it down? By your words and by your body language, even inside if your heart is racing, slow and low. And it will be, and some people say, no, it's not going to work. They're not going to listen to me. It's going to drive them crazy. Okay, so let's say if you talk really slow, it might really drive them crazy. So you might not be, hey guys, you might be, hey guys, but you're not going to be, what is going on here? Okay? Now, it's also important to notice that you, even when you see something, you might not know the whole story, okay? Because you don't know how that other kid might have been bothering your child the entire day. And somebody just had their breaking point. So just be very aware of that also, that sometimes get the story from one and then have the other one say the story and switch. Some days it might be Mary, sometimes it might be Joey who gets to say it first or not. But get their information. But use that slow and low approach in your talking and approaching. Okay, so it's very interesting. When people come for me to parenting, I actually do not start with discipline. I'm very, very careful to not start with discipline because what I find is people discipline too much. Now, really, let's look at the word discipline. Have you ever heard of the word disciple? It's connected, right? Our job is to teach our children. So our interactions have to be in a teaching mode, okay? But what happens is when we start with discipline and I teach certain things, I find parents use it too often. And where I usually start, the first thing that I start with parents is this class, Connect Before You Correct. Because it is so important. If you want your kids to listen to you, and they will listen to you, and they'll listen to you faster, and they'll listen to you more often, is how deeply connected you are to them. Now, if you have 2 children, maybe a little easier. If you have 4 children, it's harder. If you have 7 children, it's harder because there's more. But it's the same. There are things that overlap that help you connect to them, and they respond to you different. Okay? So if anybody is interested in that class, please let me know. But because sibling things require discipline. I'm a little jumping, but I'm going to say be very careful how you use some of these strategies to not use them too often, because you need the connection as a foundation. Okay? There's also another class I give called Better Behavior Now, which shows ways, based on neuroscience, how to change people's behavior. And guess what? Kids do not listen to, or even adults, don't stop, kind of already put us on the defensive mode, right? But when we catch them doing it right, but very strategically, how we catch them and how we reinforce, we are creating the brain wires that they are going to repeat that positive behavior more. But guess what? What does research show? This is real neuro research. When we use words like stop, don't, raise our voice, it actually really does not do anything in their brain. Okay, so, but I'm jumping here because sometimes with siblings, this is what we're here for. We have to have some framework of how we discipline. So there's something called a ticket level consequence. Okay, I'm going to be honest here. I would speed if I wouldn't get a ticket. Not all the time, but sometimes. Okay, anybody else here might go 31 in a 25-mile zone sometimes, right? What's stopping me? When I know on the corner of Maple there's always a cop, guess what? I am driving 25 miles on the corner of Maple, okay? So we want to have in our repertoire some ticket level consequences. So when they do certain things, they will get something annoying that they have to do that might stop their behavior from it happening again, okay? Different ages, it might be, and we'll talk about some examples, different types of ticket level consequences. A jail level consequence is when one kid maybe has scissors coming towards another, might actually have their hands on their neck or their feet on their neck. I've seen that, trying to pull out another kid's tongue, okay? I've seen that too. There are sometimes you need something that strong, but you cannot be using jail level consequences often, because then there is something that you have to do in your approach to decrease this from happening, not just giving punitive actions. That's not going to change their behavior. And again, we're thinking about their relationships later on, okay? Relationships and who they're working with, who they're living with, and with each other. A sibling can be the most beautiful thing for a person, but at the same time, we can't put pressure on that, because sometimes there are kids that or people, they're so wired differently that not, but we have to be respectful of each other. A 2 times rule. So we don't just we might give a jail level consequence without a warning if it was that bad, okay? Some kids are playing with matches and almost set your kitchen on fire even though they knew matches were dangerous. Yeah, that would be a jail level consequence. Blood between 2 siblings, punching in the nose, something like that, jail level consequence, okay? But the 2 times rule, when we see something happen, we have to, because we have to respect our children, we have to give them the warning. If this happens again, okay, so you're not giving the ticket level consequence. That's how we would use the 2-time rule. We are giving them the warning. But when it happens again, guess what? You have to fulfill the consequence that you gave. Because if you didn't, then you just show them mommy's a pushover, daddy's a pushover, okay? But you have to think of some things. So there are, I regret that I didn't do, with my kids, the thinking chair, because it is an effective strategy. So let's say we're talking about younger kids, like a 3-year-old, not a 2-year-old. The 2-year-old doesn't have that real cognitive understanding. But let's say the 3-year-old. You would not make the 3-year-old face the wall. You would have him in a chair, but he's looking at you. When he's 4, you can turn the chair around and he's looking at the wall. When he's 5, he doesn't get the chair. He's standing up for an annoying amount of time, looking at the wall, okay? But when we start young, so some of you have older kids, so you can't kind of go backwards. I'm just giving one single example. It's just annoying, right? So at different stages, it might be, you know what, you have to clear dinner tonight by yourself. It might, if that's let's say an 11-year-old or 12-year-old. It might be, we're all watching a family movie, but you can't, okay? You have to do something else. You might not punish it. It doesn't have to be something annoying that they're not doing, but they just can't join the family movie, okay? So different things that could be annoying for them. But again, given a clear warning before the consequence for insults and name calling, those type of things, or even mild pushing, not hurting. And this is the most important thing. We have to teach negotiation skills. So when a child is very young, okay, so I think this was your question with your 2 and 3-year-olds. Okay, but this is something you could do for like early elementary years also. So when they're little, I like to have a visual in their playroom or a room where the family is, okay? But you went through these concepts with them. What does divide mean? What is that? So you take different toys and you show them, what does divide mean? Because sharing toys is actually, I think you said sharing or playing together, that's a very common thing. We'll talk about older kids afterwards. We teach them what the word switch is. So we keep on practicing. Okay, I'm switching with you. You switch with me. So they're starting to get this concept. Taking turns. I happen to like this timer. It's sold on Amazon. It's like red, yellow, green to show them the time. You could just use your phone. It's totally fine. You could let them pick the ringtone. They like that. And then playing together is also an option. Okay? Sometimes if we can't agree on any of these things, then the toy is gone altogether for both of you. Okay? So they starting at a young age, we have to teach them how to negotiate with this. Okay, but let's say it's an older kid. And the issue might be a device. There's a family device. Not everybody has their own. Okay? And the brother came in and, so let's say it's teenagers. Okay? We'll jump because some people have older kids. And he came in, I need it right now. I have to do this. I have to finish this report, like whatever. I have to do it right now. And he grabs it from her. This is a way for her to start to learn, and you teach her how to talk to him. When you do this, I feel like this. You could have told me in the morning that you were going to need it at this time. So we're teaching them how that they can negotiate, because guess what? That might be effective when they have a relationship. How to say things to each other and how to work out those type of dynamics. But what about the issues in between? Okay, I'll just jump. I can't remember if I have a slide here. I'm going to talk about something. There are times you could call mommy and daddy for help. We want them to know that you are not alone. And guess what? That's why we can't just say, work it out yourself. Sometimes they need intervention from us. Okay, but we're going to teach them. First of all, what is an emergency? Running to me and screaming, house on fire, somebody's hurt. So you can't come running in that level voice, okay? When it's, he just took my toy away from me, okay? So we're teaching them different things. We're also teaching them how to negotiate. And we're teaching them also what happens when you didn't negotiate and you called mommy or daddy. One of you might be getting a punishment, or both of you might be getting a punishment. So we're setting them up to learn, and we're putting them as accountable. We are here for help, but I want to see what steps you take first. But we can't just throw that on them. We had to role play with them that at different times and build up to that point. So we want to promote positive relationships between them. Now, first of all, can I make anyone here like broccoli? Does anybody here not like broccoli? I happen to love broccoli. Or Brussels sprouts. I love Brussels sprouts, but I know a lot of people don't, right? No matter what I do, I cannot make you love Brussels sprouts. We cannot make child A love child B. But the golden rule, what you don't want done to you, you can't do to them. That is something we can enforce in our house. Some people call it the relationship rule. That is something we can enforce, okay? But we also want them to like each other. So we have to do things together, okay? So, there are different games that I'm a very big game person. Maybe it's also, I was a therapist for so long. So we use games in so many different ways, but having that time, I used to work with one family. I can never be like them. I think both parents they were older when they had children. Monday night was game night. Tuesday night was craft activity night. Wednesday night was baking night. Wow. Okay. Wow. Most people can't do that, but you could do it sometimes. And maybe it's a Sunday night. Maybe it's a Saturday night where you're doing something together. Okay. And create a family identity, and even call yourself, we're the Williamses. The Williamses always come early. So, make brand your family. The Williamses love anything grilled, right? Talk about yourself as a group, because then they become, that's part of their family and the part of their identity. Have jokes. Have a family joke. Have personal jokes. Even if you maybe have that, baby that's annoying and screams a lot, you could, have it. Oh my gosh, you make a nickname for the thing, not of the older kid. You wouldn't pick on an older kid, but like you could make a joke of the situation. Humor goes very, very far in any relationship. Okay. Going back, celebrating each child's unique abilities. Every person has to shine. Everybody has something that they can shine. It could even be that the child, let's say it might be a child with special needs who has a beautiful smile, who's maybe nonverbal, but has a beautiful smile. And you say things out loud. Oh my gosh, when Richie smiles, I just light up, or you made Richie smile. You're such a great brother, so you could tie anything. You could find something that child shines in. Age appropriate responsibilities. This is a very big one. I was working with a family this week and she was telling me how she wants her 7-year-old to clean the bathroom fully and things like that. And I'm thinking to myself, that's wonderful. But like most 7-year-olds don't clean bathrooms. Maybe we could teach them not to pee on the seat, okay? But that's not a realistic expectation or a chore for him to do the bathrooms. Now, every once in a while, you have a kid who's like, do you ever see MasterChef, like the kids, or Chop Jr.? That changed me because my daughter was showing like real cooking, baking skills, and I was having a hard time when she was in 3rd grade, letting her use the food processor. And then I'm also a feeding therapist. I watched Chop Jr. with some of my clients, and I was like, the 3rd grader is using a deep fryer, okay? Like, I could let my child use the food processor supervised. Like, it changed me, right? So, age-appropriate responsibilities, meaning like, you have to know what, and if you don't know, go online. ChatGPT, first of all, is wonderful, but even regular Google, look at what are age-appropriate chores. Okay, let's say you have an older child. That child needs more privileges with more responsibilities that you give it. Okay, so there has to be some bonuses for that child. There has to be some extra things you do for that child, because if they got more responsibility, then you have to show them that it's not just like you're older and it's terrible being older because I have to do all this extra work. Whether it's letting them stay up later, a lot later, and doing something with you, whether it's taking them out with a friend every once in a while, you find what talks to your child. And that's something also we talk about a lot in the Connect Before You Correct. You need to know the love language for your child, because that's how you will reward them. That's how they will respond to you. Some kids love hugs. Some kids hate hugs. So when you're huggy and thinking you're giving affection to that child and that kid doesn't like hugs, you're actually pushing yourself away from them. So it's very important when you're thinking of privileges and things like that. Some kids like stuff. Some kids like service. Some kids like carrying their binder to the car makes them feel like $1 million, right? So know your child. When I say privileges or something, what speaks to your child? This is a big one. Facilitating siblings buying gifts for each other. When you're at the grocery store, you could say, hey, Joey, you pick out for Mary a pack of gum. When and let Joey have a pack of gum too. You're making him think about the sibling, and this works wonders for those kids who hate each other, okay? Because when you are thinking of the person and you are actually giving them something happens on the side of the giver and something happens on the side of the person who just received it. So it is a very, very powerful thing, and it actually really does change chemistry. So just a little thing like that. And I'm not even talking about birthday gifts. I'm saying it could be something like so insignificant, or even just having them think of when you're at the grocery store, what cereal does Amy like? Just making them think of the other one. Okay, some of the biggest fighting things. Who sits where at the family, if you have a family dinner, who sits where at the table? Or the car. Very big things. You have to be strategic. There are sometimes 2 kids cannot sit next to each other or they will be poking each other's eyes out. I have seen this in carpool, okay? Like, it wasn't even my kids, it was somebody else's kid. But also, for family meals, sometimes the kid really wants to sit next to mommy or daddy, right? So you could have a rotation. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, it's you, and Tuesday, Thursday. This way, because sometimes it's not possible the way the seating is. But when you show them, this is a big deal for you, I'm coming up with a solution, they can handle it on Mondays and Wednesdays when they don't, because they feel heard. We want to make our children feel seen and heard and celebrated. Consider rotating. Oh, I wrote, okay, for the Shabbos meal. I'm sorry, for some people don't know what that is. That's like a Friday night or Saturday meal. And that's a very formal meal. So some kids really get picky about seats. Sharing plans. Okay, we went over this, how to teach that. This is a big issue with toys or things and possessions, and it starts young. Now, there are some kids who notice when the other kid got 7/8 more of a piece of cake, but they really do notice. And there are some kids like me who totally don't notice. I'm like so not a detail, like it would have to be a very big difference for me to notice. But because that kid notices, it's important to him. So we can ask him, when we know this, we look for trends in what our children are fighting. When people start working with me, they have to take a lot of data. We have to go through the day. When are most issues happening? Why are those issues happening? Okay? And start to do some detective work. So let's say a lot of the fights is, he got more. So we ask him when we're cutting something, do you want to be the cutter? Sometimes a kid could be the one who cuts the cake. Or do you want to be the picker? That you get to pick first. Okay? Sometimes the other kid, it does not make a difference. I hate when they say you get what you get and, whatever. Because when you go to a buffet table, you pick out a very specific piece of chicken. It's all sesame chicken, but you want that piece of chicken. Why do we take that away from kids with siblings? Okay? There are some kids who care. There are some kids who don't care. When we can let them choose, don't have this rule, you get what you get, because sometimes we can, and they feel great. And they feel that we gave them more control. And so that's a very big issue with the jealousy. Sometimes when you're following the connect before you correct approach, and everybody is getting what they need in a sense, as much as we can physically able, then you could joke about it. Like when he says, I think he gets more all the time. So you could joke about it. Do you think I love him more? Right? Like you can make it, I must love him more, right? You could joke about it when you know you're working on all the relationships. You do not joke on it when it does have that one kid really might be getting much more than the others. Yeah. I'm sorry, what?
What if your noticer child is the middle child and the one that doesn't have special needs?
Right, so then you have to let him always be the one. Pick on him first to pick stuff. You have to find a way to give him that because you're making him feel important. And that's what we have to do. We have to make our kids feel extremely important. And different kids, different things bother different kids. So like people say it's so hard. No, it's not. Because this kid watching a sports game later with dad might be the biggest reward in the world. And this girl just watching you put on your makeup in the morning is like so special. So you can find what things work for those kids to have that, and it doesn't always have to be things you buy. Okay, this is that hard part of model the calm approach. Our regulation affects their regulation. So your question about the adults fighting is an issue to address with the adults. Because they're showing the kids. So it's either us as like if we realize that we scream a lot. And it happens. We're human, and everybody's temperament is different. Some of us have real we react very quickly, right? We have to work on training ourselves because we don't realize how far-reaching it is. We are teaching our kids how just that when you're bigger, you're allowed to yell, right? So we have to address it at an adult level. And I have mantras, like different things work for different people. Self-talk works for me. Okay? And one of the mantras I have in my head all the time is respond, not react. And I will say this to myself, 20 times a day. I will say that before the kids come home. Okay? We all have that explosive child, right? I have to prepare myself for her walking through the door. She's an amazing kid. She has amazing strengths, but she also is very explosive, right? I can't start yelling at her like, don't make a big deal about this, right? Because now I'm just feeding it and showing her that it's okay to react when you're an adult, right? No, so we have to show them how to respond. Now, I also talk out loud. I need to drink a cup of water right now really slowly. I need to go for a car ride. I could leave my kids. My kids are older. I could leave them. I need to be alone in my room right now and read for 20 minutes right now. And we also don't have to, by the way, sometimes they do something and we really need to think about it. That's okay. You can say, you know what? I need to think about this right now. Because sometimes when we shoot from the seat, the seat of our pants, we don't make good decisions. So it's better to wait. Yeah. You can't even do, well, sometimes with toddlers, only with toddlers, you use your hands, I want to say. With your other kids, you really have to use a hands-off approach. But toddlers, sometimes we have to remove from the situation because the older kid is annoyed that the toddler just ruined their stuff. Okay? For a toddler, very briefly, you can withhold affection. Do not withhold affection from older kids. But from a toddler, you could now have a different face, and you could not be so kissy and hug. You know how toddlers, we pick up and you could stop that. It's important for the older kids to feel respected, that sometimes like the toddler needs to be put in a different space for a second. Or you could go play in mommy's room, take your toys and go play in mommy's room, and I'll keep the toddler here. We don't always have to be together all the time because that will create a dynamic. But when they feel like they're respected and mommy's watching out for me or daddy's watching out for me, then that goes very far. Group activities, like there are so many like great Uno group games or Chameleon or different things. Like when you can, or even if you have little kids, doing like a small little thing. We're baking together. Sometimes if they can't do all the steps of baking, maybe they could just do the decorating part. But look for things that speak to your kids and family and try to do it, even if it's once a month. It carries over to other points of the month. Let go of perfection. Again, a lot of times parents, they just don't love each other. They don't whatever. Let go of that, okay? Our goal is that we respect each other. We can't make children love each other. Like I said, we can't make you love broccoli. Every child has a unique personality, needs, and emotional responses. So really seeing those different things that tick different children off and be respectful of that. It is an investment in you for your child's future to have them to work on this, because this is going to affect all their interactions, and also how far-reaching it is. It's going to affect how they are with their partner and how they are as a parent. They learn by doing, not from words. Do not sit there having discussions. Discussions don't work, okay? Long discussions. So if something's not working, you're seeing this time of day is hard, then we have to problem solve what we can do to make that a better time of day. And sometimes we do a lot of role playing, and it might be annoying, and people say, oh, my kids are never going to do that. Well, you tell them, we're going to practice this 3 times, or we don't get the family movie night, okay? And they might begrudgingly do it, but they do it. Again, we don't like to use punitive things, but there are ways to use things, or withhold a privilege, or we get ice cream after we finish. So why do siblings bother each other? So first of all, the prefrontal cortex is not fully developed, especially in boys, until 24. So there's impulsive kids who do impulsive things, okay? So their brain is not fully developed. Sometimes we have kids who have a lot of academic issues, and they hold it together all day in school, and they come home and they lose it. They cannot hold it together. Mental fatigue, physical fatigue, they just let it all out, okay? So who are they going to let it all out on? Sometimes mom, sometimes siblings. Sometimes overstimulation in an environment, sometimes understimulation in an environment. Make sure you have age-appropriate things for your children as outlets. Very, very important. Modeled behavior, hold on. This is what we were just talking about, copying interactions seen from adults. So that's why it's very important to address it. When we see certain things, we need to address it at the adult level if that's what the kids are seeing. Intervention strategies, okay, like what we said, that calm, firm approach, using our voice, practice it when they're not around. Okay, sometimes we know this time of day is my hardest time of day. Go through it. Go through it. So like I said, when people start with me, we do a lot of data collection. And so I saw once with a family that 8 o'clock was huge melt time of the day, like tally marks. So I said, what's going on at 8 o'clock? Well, that's when the kitchen closes. Oh, okay. Do you work? No. What time do the kids go to school? 8:30. And I'm thinking to myself, why does the kitchen close at 8 o'clock? Especially when you have 2 kids with ADHD. To get to breakfast is a hard thing, right? And we need them to eat breakfast because they're taking their meds. So I can't tell her why. Like, why do you have this rule? This rule is obviously important for her. So we talk about, you can have this rule, but then you think of other times a day that you're more flexible in your rules, because you only get a certain number of rules for your kids. If you want them to really listen, if you want them to live in a comfortable home, you can't have too many rules that are whatever. So like, our approach is that we can't be all disciplined. We have to be very careful. And if we saw, like, in the morning, we were really picking on them and like, we need a little bit of criticism because their boss is going to criticize them one day. So a little bit. But if we see that we gave so many rules and instructions and everything, we have to like lay off, because you know what? That changed the whole vibe of the house. When their kids live in a very strict, tons of rule houses, then they become also like very edgy with each other. So we have to see what we're doing or what we're imposing, how that affects them. Okay, immediate action, like we said, involving neck, blood, knives, right away, jail level response. The 3-step resolution is what I was saying. You could tell them first, their first thing that they have to do is figure out how to negotiate with each other, ask nicely, work out a sharing plan, whatever. After they do that, they could call you. But if they didn't do that first, there might be a punishment on somebody's side who wasn't the negotiating side. So as they get older, when they're little, when they're 3 years old, you don't have to enforce that somebody's going to get a punishment. But when they're 7, you can ask them, well, what did you try first? And the relationship rule, no disrespect tolerated. That's really, what you don't want, and sometimes you catch them that they do something and they get so annoyed when their sister does it to them. Not in the moment, but later you could say, I noticed that. What did that feel like, right? You could have conversations, but conversations and discussions can't be your main way to teach things. So some kids are always seeking attention. Those kids might need more attention. Find ways to give them more attention so they're not always getting the negative attention. And practice makes choices, like we said, perfect. A lot of that role playing. Praise children when they seek the attention appropriately. And this is my favorite thing. This is the Better Behavior Now course. If anybody's interested in it, this is foundational. This is how you wire the brain to be cooperative or whatever. So it's commenting, labeling, and rewarding. So let's say this happens. Brother flicks sister every time he walks by her, right? So the one time he doesn't, you make a big deal. Hey, I just saw that you walked by and you didn't even touch her. Let's go in the kitchen and have some ice cream. Okay? What did he just now see? Okay, it's starting to wire in his brain. He's going to start telling you, hey, Ma, I didn't touch her. Can I get the ice cream? Okay? But it also works for spouses, by the way. Oh, my gosh, you took out the garbage without me reminding you. Like, oh, my gosh, right? But it's making sure you're commenting what you saw, you're labeling it, and then you're rewarding it. Now, do we do that all the time? No, because when he starts walking by his sister and he's not flicking her and it becomes natural for him, then we move on to something else. There will always be something else to work on. Okay? But this is, if any of your children have ABA, this is ABA light. But this is ABA life. This is why ABA works. If anybody doesn't know what that means, applied behavior analysis, that's very effective for some children who are on the spectrum. But this is ABA light. And this is what you have to, if you keep on seeing that these things are happening, you as a parent have to set up a method to help decrease it, not punish them for doing that. Do you get that? We have a lot of responsibility, but the reward is amazing. Jealousy. So fairness is not equality. And this is when you have little kids, you could do things like this. Like when one kid needs a Band-Aid, go put Band-Aids on everybody. Why? Because they start to see, okay, not everybody gets the same thing, okay? And they start to understand that. But when you're giving everybody what they need at different times, they start to feel that that's okay. Again, if there's a kid who notices everything a little more, try to be noticing them more because they need it. Different people need levels of attention. And also, just to know this, kids with ADHD are more jealous kids. So that's something to, just they're wired that way. So just be aware of that to try to find some things to give them attention for, etc. Or maybe don't praise the other kids in front of them too much. Again, to make things fair, you could do a chore wheel. So if when you have older kids and there are a lot of responsibilities, so no one feels slighted, no one feels like I'm working too hard. Game nights are wonderful. That family identity, like we said, like we love everything grilled. We love Chipotle. Like you can have your brand and make them feel proud of that. Okay, so we have the children with special needs. Again, like what I said before, you need to not praise the kid for being a good sport. You need to sit with them and sit with them in their frustration and also express your feelings. You were having a good time too. It was hard to stop. You have to find a way. Again, it might not be possible more than once a month, but it has to be that once a month that child is away from the other child, doing something with you, doing something with grandma, doing something like outside of the house with them, just being able to be. And sometimes you can, not everything has to be done that second sometimes, even with a kid with special needs. Sometimes we could put something off in order to address that child, the other child's needs at the moment, and that will go very far for them also. Really watch out for those invisible children who they almost seem so low maintenance. They're so great. They don't, whatever. Really watch out for them because it comes up later. New baby. Okay. It's first of all, a toddler is part baby and part child. So just keep that in mind. But even if you had a 4-year-old, even if you had a 5-year-old, there is sometimes a natural regression. Dr. Spock in his book years ago talked about, imagine if your partner came home with someone else and tells you, I love you just the same. Nothing is changing in our relationship. That does not make any sense whatsoever. It is the same for a child who has a baby coming into the house. And what do we do with babies? We pick them up and we kiss them, right? Politicians, I don't know if they do that anymore, but what did you see politicians with babies? Kissing stranger babies, right? Because when you see a baby, there's something that's drawn to you to hug them and kiss them. When you have a new baby, hug them, mush them, kiss them when your other kid is at school. But when that kid comes home, your baby does not always need to be held or kissed. You could have a baby carrier that you're holding them in, but you're not kissing them every second because the older child needs to be kissed and coddled and respected. If he suddenly wants a bottle, don't say you're big. First of all, don't use that word at all. Don't use the word big because I don't want to be big. I'd rather be little, okay? And get all this attention. Give him the bottle. He's not going to be using a bottle at 7, most likely, okay, unless he has an oral motor issue or something. But giving that to him, we'll just give that to him, and he feels taken care of. So don't think about what am I going to do if he's asking for a pacifier for a second. And make him a helper. You can use the word helper, but don't use the word big, okay? And give the older children space, maybe, baby stuff takes over, everything. Make sure that his stuff is being respected. No matter what we do, we can't guarantee that our children are going to get along because there's so many complexities and personalities and everything. But what we can do is try to make our house the safest house possible. And where everybody's celebrated and loved and appreciated. And listen, there are kids who are really hard. There are kids that are hard to love, that are challenging. So just somebody once phrased it like this: we have to love all our children. We do not have to be in love with all our children or in love with all our children all the time. There are some times that they're more challenging, but that's kind of what we're going to expect as siblings, that they don't have to be in love with it. This kid, that brother really does annoy you. Balancing the family identity with individual needs. Sometimes a kid needs something specifically that maybe we won't, as a family, we can't all go to a baseball game, but for him that might mean the world. So maybe we'll find a way that he gets to go with someone to a baseball game. Emotional coaching is the way to go. Focus on feelings, not issues, because issues end, but the feelings ruminate. And it's so interesting what comes up in therapy later of different situations that happened when Joey used to do this. The issue is over, but that feeling stayed for a very, very long time. And again, the more we invest in our siblings, our children's relationships, the more success they're going to have in life. Okay, I love this book, Alexander and the Terrible, Horrible, No Good, Very Bad Day, because it really illustrated how that kid woke up from the morning he woke up, everything went wrong, right? But the mother punishes him at the end. But it was a buildup. And I think that this author really creatively did it because all the situations that used really do happen. And it just gives us that perspective that, first of all, some kids just need some days more TLC. And it's not what we see And we can't just be quick to act on what we just saw, that he pushed his brother in the mud. It did not start there. Okay? I used to use a word with my kids when they were in like elementary school ages, like, I don't know who started it, but who's going to end it? And in the beginning, I used to reward who ended it, even if it was crazy and it was whatever, out of control, but somebody ended it, and then they used to come and tell me, I ended it, right? And so, you know, that's how you train them, and that's how you will get more cooperation.